On today's episode, we get to hear from dads Myke and Harold as they share their heartfelt journey of deciding to grow their family through surrogacy and egg donation. We go into the complexities of this path as a same sex couple, navigating medical complications and the emotional and practical considerations that they faced. Myke and Harold highlight the invaluable role of Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions in guiding them through the process and providing unwavering support. Despite the challenges and setbacks, their determination to become parents fueled their perseverance. They emphasize the need for open communication, a strong support system, and thoughtful consideration of the long term implications of decisions regarding genetic material. After starting their journey over 10 years ago, a lot in the industry has changed, but Myke and Harold provide a wealth of insights for anyone embarking on this path to growing their family. This was a fun and amazing conversation, and I can't wait for you to hear from the two incredible individuals, Myke and Harold, who navigated their surrogacy process with resilience, humor, and love. Me, you, and who? Who knew it would take more than two people to have a baby? In a world where infertility is no longer a taboo topic, this podcast will take you through all of the different aspects of surrogacy and egg donation through the lens of many who walk this journey in different ways. My name is Whitney Hall, and I am a two-time surrogate, now turned surrogacy coordinator for Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, the very agency I used when I chose to carry for two amazing families. With this podcast, it is our goal to help guide and support you as you learn about what it takes to grow a family in an alternative way, as well as hear inspiring and beautiful stories of how this path has changed lives forever. We can't wait for you to hear about just one more way happy families are created every day. Hi, you guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Okay, so since we have two of you, why don't we go ahead and Myke and Harold, whose voice is who?
I'm Myke.
I'm Harold.
Yay! And you guys have two amazing kiddos who are 9 and 5. You're
Almost
like
nine. Almost nine,
9.
almost 6.
Almost 9, almost 6. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
And Maddie is your almost 9-year-old.
Correct.
And Henry is your almost 6-year-old.
Yep. You'll hear us calling him this too a lot.
I love it. So we're in the thick of parenthood, but I want to take you guys in the Wayback Machine, and I want to hear how we even got here. What did it look like whenever you guys were first having those conversations of deciding to grow your family?
Oh my gosh.
It was actually kind of just random, to be honest. So
Yeah.
back when we started, gay marriage wasn't legal yet. So we started because my sister had her first child, right? I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we were spending a lot of time in Houston because Myke taught there on weekends a lot. And
that's where she lives.
Yeah. And he was a colicky little baby. And so we were spending a lot of time, and she was like, "Oh, I forgot how wonderful you are with kids. Your voice just calms them." And we were talking at some point later, and she was, I forgot what we said, and said something about a family. And I was like, "Well, that kind of doesn't work." And she goes, "Well, I thought I'd tell you this before, but I'll give y'all a batch of eggs. Like, I'm happy to do that." So that's actually not what ended up happening. That didn't create our family, but we went down that path. But that is definitely what started us on the conversation of, oh, this is a possibility of having a genetically tied family.
Yeah, which was really important for you both at the time because of just where things stood as far as legal aspects.
Legal was definitely a huge part. And Myke's mom is older. My grandmother, who I was super close to, was dying at the time. And so it was a lot of emotional and we're both very practical. Well, me a little more. I'm an engineer, so I'm very logical. So the legal standpoint was critical to us at the point.
Yeah. I can remember him coming home, and sort of having this conversation of, so, my sister and I were talking. I'm like,
Oh man.
what were you talking about now? And to be perfectly honest, I had grown up in a very rural part of Florida, and it was, looking back now, more conservative than living in a big city. And
Yeah.
I'd been picked on for being gay, and
Mm.
it was like that whole growing up in the '80s process, which was really, really tough. I remember saying to Harold, I was like, my gosh, it was hard enough me being actually gay and being picked on to bring a child into a gay family, whether they end up being gay or straight. Like, I just don't know if I'm ready for that. It just seemed
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
again, gay marriage, it hadn't been, sort of approved, if you will, allowed. And so it took us, a few months.
Mm-hmm.
We were actually in Italy for Harold's 40th birthday,
Mm.
when gay marriage wasn't approved, but I think it was the Defense of Marriage Act that got overturned.
That's true.
We were in, and I sort of said, okay, by the time we come back from this trip, we'll have another conversation, and let's see if this is the path for us to go. And I remember
Yeah.
we were in Venice, and we were watching the news, and the Supreme Court in the U.S. Had announced that they were starting to dismantle some of these prejudicial laws that were in place. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, that's our sign, Harold. Let's
Right.
let's have a family. And so I
Oh, I
remember
love
crying
that.
around the bed in the hotel room.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then we sort of started going down the road.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Wow. So so during that time, you guys you guys did end up legally getting married during this whole process, right?
Mm,
Well, yeah,
during the
during the
process,
During the
yes,
process.
but very
yes,
far into the process is probably the best way of describing it.
right.
At
Sure.
the very
Yeah,
very last moment.
yes. It was. We kept
We
we
were
kept
focused on the kid part.
yes, yes.
And the
Well,
legality.
right. We were in our ninth month. Yeah, just entering our ninth month, when it became legal to be married, the two of us. And
Uh-huh.
so we kind of kidded like it was gonna be like a shotgun wedding. We had a baby on the way, and
Baby on the way, we got to get married.
let's make this an honest thing. And so it was actually really sweet. I was, like we said, I was teaching in Houston a lot at the time, or maybe I was talking about that earlier. And I was in my class teaching when the Supreme Court allowed gay marriage to move forward. And I was teaching in Houston, and it was an executive MBA class. I worked for Tulane University,
Uh-huh.
and I can remember it was like a 4-hour class. And after the first hour or so, I could see in the corner of my eye that my phone was blowing up. And so I knew a decision came down. I just didn't know what it was. And so
Sure.
we took a break. I took a look, and it said, gay marriage was now allowed. And I had to go right back into class and start teaching again. And I was like 3 words into my lecture, and I just started to cry. And even thinking
Oh.
about it now, and of course the class, they're all in like their 40s and so, and I made a bad assumption that when you're in a southern city, that there'd be some conservative elements that wouldn't support this. And
Uh-huh.
as I started to cry, I then said, "I'm so sorry, y'all." I said, "But I just found out that I can marry my husband. Well, marry my partner,
Partner. Yeah.
and we've got a baby that we're like almost about to have." And they all started clapping, and
Oh my
it was the most
gosh.
beautiful moment. And I remember then calling Harold, and we were like, let's get on a plane,
Yeah.
let's get going.
I was in the French Quarter where our our community did a big gathering for
Yeah.
the announcement, so they knew the announcement was coming, and they set up. There were a couple of hundred people who went out outside of St. Louis Cathedral in the French Quarter and waited for the announcement to come down, and everybody just kind of had a celebration type thing.
Oh my gosh. What a magical moment. Baby on the way, and we're getting married. Shotgun wedding in the most
Yep,
beautiful way.
yep, yep.
Yep.
That's amazing. Okay, there's so much there, but let's go back. Let's talk about that baby that was on the way and how we got there. So, okay, you guys have decided we're going to grow our family.
Yep.
Things were unfolding as far as just the legalities and things like that. I know There was the beautiful process of your sister's just amazing offer. And I know there were some things where it didn't quite go the way that you thought, but eventually we get to the moment where we have embryos, we're going forward, and now we're to that surrogacy process. And I know there's so many ups and downs. How did you guys handle those moments when things kind of, as things were rolling?
Sure. You want to start first? Or me?
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, it was definitely a journey getting embryos. So my sister did do a harvest. We did fertilization, had a batch of embryos, um, and we did our. Well, before that, we got involved with Surrogate Solutions and with Gail and
Yeah.
set up all of the going through the legal process, which we had an amazing attorney at the time. Um, which it's had some unique challenges to it. She was she was terminal with cancer
Mm,
during our first process, but she was phenomenal and helped
Yeah.
us
We,
get
we didn't know what she was
right.
going through. And so it was a process.
Yes,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so Gail, our surrogate, I forget even what
Coordinator.
the
Yeah.
coordinator was incredible on helping, keeping us calm. Of we'll get through everything.
Sure.
Giving us wonderful advice on the relationship you have with the surrogate that you've picked at that point, until you get the legal contract signed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how you want to be friendly, but you don't want to overstep, until you have all of your legal documents in place. It just kind of
Mhm.
makes it a little
Yeah.
easier to go through.
And let's sort
Um,
of back up just for a
yeah,
minute that, I mean, having surrogate solutions, having an agency involved, there's other ways to have a kid, but I can't stress enough that, that the value that they added to our process to have
Mm,
someone, an agency who you can call and say, listen, this, we want to ask these questions of our potential surrogate, or the potential surrogate wants to ask questions of you. And it's just so nice to have someone in the middle who can say, no, Myke and Harold, this is a normal question that someone should ask of you. It might
yeah.
feel weird, but this is totally normal, or vice versa, to say, hey, yes, it is appropriate for you to ask the surrogate this question, or no, that's actually not, like, I know it, that these conversations have to be had, but let me get involved in this. And so it
Sure. Just
really,
help navigate that.
yeah,
yeah, exactly, because you don't know. I mean, the idea, like, let's have a kid. It's
yeah.
not linear. It is not. I mean, like you said, he's an engineer. I teach finance. We like to have step A, B, C, D, and we very
Uh-huh.
quickly found out we would like get to step D, and then have to back up to B. Then we might go ahead a little bit, and then start over the whole process. And so,
Mm-hmm.
it was so great to have Surrogate Solutions in that,
Right,
right?
absolutely. I mean, I come from a very big family,
Yeah.
and so I'm very familiar with my nieces and nephews and my sisters going through having all their kids. But when you're looking at a contract and it's, well, housekeeping and, maternity clothes allowance and things that, that you watch your family go through, but you don't think of these items, and
Sure.
you don't think of babysitting
Hmm.
of their existing children when they're going on a doctor's appointment. Um, all things that some of them, like Myke said, if you didn't have somebody guiding you and you're looking at the legal aspects, you might think, oh, this person's really being unreasonable. This is like
Mm.
nitpicking,
Right.
um, and then when you come back after the fact and you've lived through it, you realize those things are actually all absolutely reasonable. Uh,
Yeah.
there are
Hmm.
safeguards in place for the what ifs that absolutely can happen, and
Sure.
every pregnancy is different. And so you want all that spelled out ahead of time, because the last thing you want to do is be in a spot where you're 7 months pregnant and something's going on in your pregnancy or with your surrogate, and you've set a budget, but your surrogate's also going through a financial hardship because of something that's going on with the pregnancy, and you're trying to feel, am I guilty for not taking care of this, or am I So it's really important to have everything lined up and set up ahead of time, which is what y'all
Absolutely. Yeah,
so help.
just thinking hoping that those surprises don't happen, but being prepared when they do.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we had that in spades in being able to have the help. And we actually met our surrogate in sort of an atypical way, I would say.
Yes.
That another thing that the agency will do is they will actually figure out personalities to a particular degree. So
Absolutely.
and on both sides, right? So we can be pretty rule regimented. And so if there is, a match, Gail would say, I don't, I've got someone who's wonderful, who's carried once in the past and had a successful pregnancy, but I just don't. I think that probably I want to keep looking to see if I can find someone else that matches your personality, or vice versa, right? That this
Yeah.
person probably won't appreciate, A, B, and C. So with us, Gail said, "Listen, I have got a first-time gestational carrier surrogate, and she's actually coming to New Orleans with her husband, and I actually think y'all will be just an amazing match. I normally would go with to sort of facilitate these meetings, but if y'all are both comfortable, you can meet up in New Orleans. She would love to meet you." And we did. We ended up meeting in a hotel lobby and sort of had coffee
Yeah.
and talked for an hour and a half, and fell in
Oh
love with
my gosh, so
her and her
fun.
husband. And and that started our journey. And I'll tell you, when Harold's sister gave us this gift of eggs, we were working with a hospital that we had a choice of a couple
Well,
hospitals that would work.
fertility clinics.
Fertility clinics.
Fertility clinics, yeah.
Yes. And one at the time, because gay marriage wasn't legal, was not comfortable working with same sex couples, and that was kind of a gut punch. We went
Yeah.
to another local fertility clinic, and again, who knows what happened, but in the end, the embryos, they looked as if they were fully viable and good quality, but there might have been some overstimulation of the eggs that were
Mm,
because the harvest was some huge number,
They harvested 21 eggs from my sister,
that's a
right?
which
lot.
So it's a
after
lot,
doing additional harvests, we've realized that's like
right?
insane.
Yeah, and so we did it. We did our first transfer. It didn't take. We had a biochemical pregnancy, which in essence means, for those of you who are listening to this podcast, it means that there are it's all about the numbers in terms of how viable the pregnancy is.
Right, the hormones of
Yes,
that
exactly.
first beta. Uh-huh.
Correct. And so it came back at a number that was only like 15. You want something over 50. But if you find yourself on the internet, like unfortunately we did, you can find cases in which 15 could have been a viable pregnant. And so
Yep, you always gotta be aware of that, Dr.
yeah,
Google or Dr. Facebook.
yep, yep. Don't do it. Go to your agency, and in the end, we didn't have the best experience with that particular fertility clinic, and so it's important that you have agency to sort of pull yourself out of a particular partner if you need to and move to another. And that's where Gail was able to say, "Listen, why don't you move?" And we met Dr. Goldstein in Plano,
Mm,
Texas, and he
yeah.
is an amazing,
Yes.
amazing man in his clinic. And we moved up there, and he attempted to use the same genetic material to try two more times.
Mhm.
And in the end, it just wasn't. He said, "Listen, guys, do you want to have a family, or do you want to have a tie genetically?" And we're like, "Well, I mean, we just always thought about using your sister, but no, we just want to have a family." Because at the time, Harold's sister got pregnant with another child, and therefore could not give us another batch of eggs when we finally
On
decided.
Yeah, I
Right.
think I called her on our after our third attempt,
Yeah.
and I
Uh-huh.
had the news, and Mike and I were like, we're emotionally exhausted, financially we're tapped. We had
Yeah.
also bought our dream home for our family
Mhm.
during that time,
So
um,
much happening.
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
meant finances weren't where they were supposed to be.
Right.
And so when they called, we were just like, okay, this is a sign. This just wasn't meant for us, and I called my sister, and my sister's kind of like me. She's not a very emotional, forward person, and she starts crying on the phone when I told her it didn't take, and I was like, oh, I was like, look, we're fine, we're okay. And she goes, no, you don't get it. I'm 6 weeks pregnant. I found out yesterday, which means I won't be able to give you eggs for a
Right.
year and a half. Um,
Uh-huh.
and
Oh,
so
it's this beautiful bittersweet. Oh, you're about to have another niece or nephew. Oh, wait, now I've got to think about all
Yeah, very like
this.
Shakespearean, right? Like the like it's really like dramatic, you know.
um,
Very Shakespearean.
so and then several hours later, we knew Dr. Goldstein wanted to speak to us, and he called us back, and he was like,
Sure.
look, guys, like Myke said, like, I know y'all want family, but like, come on, y'all. Like, y'all are going to be incredible parents. You want a family, not a genetic tie. Uh,
Yeah.
and he was incredible, and he was like, we will make this work. Uh, and
Mm.
They,
he came through on his word, and
they just started having their own um, egg donation
a very small
They're
pool.
frozen bank.
portal. Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so a young woman, we matched with.
And it was ironic because when we went through the surrogate thing, it was so easy, right? Gail was able to find us somebody that was kind of like perfect. Um, but ironically, when it came time to the egg donor
Mhm.
thing, we searched his database, we searched Egg Donor Solutions
Yep.
database, we searched another database, and there was just not that one person, right? Like
Just waiting.
in Myke
Yeah.
and I's relationship, I do all the planning, I do all the pre work, thinking I've got it all done, and I show him a plan, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Well, I don't like that one piece that's the center brick of the whole building." Uh, well, then
When we
go
talked about
restart.
editing, Whitney, we talked about editing certain parts of this. Yes, you can.
We can just take that one out. Yep.
So, I'd give Mike a list, and he'd be like, oh, that look, I
This
don't see
part
it.
doesn't sit right with
Yeah,
me. I'm not quite. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to so many parents when they're navigating egg donation, just the database. It's so overwhelming because for
yeah,
some people they're looking for their twin, for other people they're really particularly worried about a certain aspect. It's there's
yeah,
just it, yeah, and for everybody seems to figure out their thing, that their kind of top
yeah,
5 priorities, or just I get this feeling that this works out, but it's a lot and it's a big decision for sure.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
we wanted someone who had similar features to us that would make sense that the child could be either one of ours, even if they took after the mother. Ironically, Dr. Goldstein's nurse called one day and she goes, "I know y'all are having a hard time. I really think I have the perfect person. Give me till Wednesday. I'm not going to put her live until y'all see her profile." And
Yeah.
it was truly
mhm,
like the she hit every mark, and then her photo was her probably at Cinco de Mayo with the big sombrero on, and Mike was
Love
just
it.
like, "That's it.
done. That's what I
That's
want.
her."
I want.
Just needed the sombrero.
Yeah. It's really interesting, So I would an advice that I would give to anyone who's thinking about this is there's an element of this that really is odd, right? You're sort of looking through a catalog of features of people who are going to affect your family in such a meaningful way, and you don't want
Yeah.
to trivialize it, right? You don't want to sort of, but at the same time, you have to have humor about it. You
Oh
have to
gosh, yeah.
stay with your partner and be able to, be like, oh no, like as you're kind of flipping through, and then look at each other and be like, how ridiculous, it is,
Is this
is
process?
this
Yeah.
thing, and so yeah, so when that happened, we were off and running, and we got pregnant. So this is after we had 3 failed attempts. We got pregnant, and our surrogate is the most amazing woman. She had 3 kids of her
Mm.
own. Her husband, I just every time you see him, you just want to give him a big old hug.
Oh,
And she stuck with us. So this was her first time being a surrogate, and she, so this went on for well over a year
This is
of
yeah.
attempt, and then because the first time I said it was a biochemical pregnancy, which then that didn't work out. The next two was like not even a thing. The doctor's like,
Sure.
no, it just didn't take. And so for her to stick with us, was just an amazing, amazing gift that she gave us. And on that fourth time,
Mm.
because remember, each time she's having to prepare her body, she's having to take shots to,
Yeah.
trick her body into being able to accept a pregnancy. And so by that fourth time, it took, and it was just meant to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and talk about, wanting that linear timeline, I mean, I know into like you were hoping for that linear timeline and
Right.
surrogates they're, oh, well, and a lot of time, I wouldn't say all, but most surrogates haven't necessarily, gone through the delay of,
Mhm.
of pregnancy or, had a lot of trouble getting pregnant. Now some have done IVF, prior, but to not have things go right, if you will, that first time, it can kind of be like a, oh wow, this timeline isn't,
Yeah.
oh, in 9 months I'm gonna have a baby. Like
Yep.
it can be up to a year. It can be those three fails. It can
Yep.
be all of those things.
And like you said, our surrogate was is amazing, and Gail was amazing in picking her. In
Mhm.
that she is a planner. She is more on the
Yes.
type A personality side, like we are. So for her, I'm sure it was just as struggling because it was, well, I had this,
Sure.
this, and this
Yeah.
planned and organized, and so to stay with
Yeah.
us was probably also the type A personality of I'm not giving up because I started this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to, because you guys had mentioned, again, even before you got to the surrogacy aspect of it, just you guys were emotionally tapped, financially tapped,
Yeah.
all of that. As you're going through this, after those fails, after it takes a while to finally find that perfect donor, all of those things, what kept you going?
That's a great question, and I'll tell you. I'm going to answer that question in a couple of ways. So, and one is sort of a cautionary tale. You hear from any woman that, right? They'll tell a woman, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, right? But when
Oh, you're good. You're good. Do it.
please put me in my place when I need to be, right? But it's like
No,
they'll
you're
say,
excellent. No, go for it.
they'll say, well, you're pregnant, but please wait until you hit, the 3 month mark roughly before you start telling people, because that first trimester is a
Oh,
time in which
yeah, there's just that
right?
general sort of, hey, 12 weeks is
Yeah.
kind of when you're most likely in the clear. Let's,
Correct.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And IVF, it's the same way. And we, the first time, there were a couple people that we had told, right? And when you get the news that you're not pregnant, what happens is that the people you told, they want to support you. And so they're texting you and they're calling. They're like, so I know you're going to get your results today and da 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 da. But when
Yeah.
you're holding each other and crying
Right.
and you just want to be alone when you find the news and you're talking to your surrogate and she's crying, uh,
Mm,
you just need to make sure that you have that moment, that it's the two of you and your surrogate, her family, that just need some time to be on the same page of, okay, what does this mean? Where do we go from here? Before you sort of, share it with others. So
yeah.
so that's not what kept us going, but that is just a sort of a cautionary tale. What you want to say, Ben?
I'd say it made it easier. So two of my sisters had some struggles getting pregnant.
Uh-huh.
Uh, one of my sisters has quadruplet 24-year-olds back in the day.
Yeah,
Back in the day when we were doing a lot of embryos.
Yes,
right.
yes,
Yeah, yeah. They're all
um,
girls,
yes,
and they're brilliant.
yes.
Oh
So
my goodness.
I watched her go through that, and then so I've seen it. So thankfully, I knew the first trimester kind of rules.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
honestly, we two people knew. My sister clearly had to know,
Clearly.
uh, and her husband, and then we had one other friend that Myke was saying that knew, and it was hard afterwards because we had a lot of people who felt like maybe they thought we weren't close enough to him because we didn't confide in them or share this journey with them, but
Mm,
it was for selfish reasons that in hindsight I'm glad we did it. I wish we wouldn't have had to, but
Yeah,
I am glad we did
yeah.
it.
We just saw another friend go through that, where he and
Yeah.
his husband. they announced very early and sadly had a miscarriage.
Mm.
Had to call 84 people, and it's just
Yeah. Well, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I think some people love the community that can come around them when there is unfortunate news, whether it's
right.
chemical or miscarriage or things like that. But then others, it is that I really would prefer to just have that smaller circle because I don't want the continued, I have to
It,
tell the story, I have to tell the
Right,
story.
it was
right.
reliving it every time you had to call someone, right?
Right.
It really is hard.
And again,
Yeah.
not to sort of keep saying this, but and again, Surrogate Solutions, Gail in particular, who was our main person, that was a community for us, right? So
Right.
that allowed
Yeah.
us other people that we could pick up the phone and just cry with them, right?
Mm.
Empathy is just really beautiful to help through the process. And your original question was what kept us going, and I think that both Harold and I are very grounded people that work
Mhm.
really well together on trying to reach a goal. Many times, as he says, he does the research and lays the groundwork, and I'll kind of show up at the end. um, but and then having that, I think that if our surrogate had been a different type of personality, or if she had thrown in the towel, that probably would have also shaken us a bit to say, I don't know, maybe I don't, what do we do?
Sure.
And I just at the end of the day, we wanted to be parents. I
Hmm.
mean, you know, careful what you wish for. Sometimes I will say we have a very headstrong daughter and son,
Yes.
but
Yes, it's gonna
you know,
serve them so well in life.
it will. We woke up this morning to Doritos all over our white couch. So
Uh-huh.
but this is what
Yes,
you
those
signed up
gorgeous
for.
moments.
Yes, and everyone listening is gonna be like, "Why do you have a white couch if you have two children?" I won't say it was me, but let's just say it was a decision we made together.
I was
Harold made the groundwork and
Yeah,
we just went with it. Yeah.
right,
I
right.
was promised it was phenomenal new fabric that withstood anything.
Yes, it does not. It does not.
But
We
Uh,
found we found
but,
it's yeah, we found the kryptonite for the white couch and it's
right,
the Dorito dust.
yeah. But these are the moments you live for,
yeah.
like if
Yes.
you look at my in my Facebook page, there's just like this litany of amazingly funny stories of what our kids have done over time. I'll share one quick one. Um, and it really is this is why you do it, even though it drives you crazy
Yes.
in the moment. When our daughter was probably, I don't know, let's just say 4.5 years old, and our son was 3 years younger than that, so not really talking much, but walking, of course. And
Sure.
she came and asked Harold's papa and I'm daddy, and so I heard, no, she came to me and asked something,
Hmm.
and I said, no, you can't have whatever.
Uh-huh.
And I walked in the bathroom and I heard her go to Harold and say the exact same thing. And there's that first time of like, oh no, you did not. You are not going to start playing with
Gonna play one against the other.
Yes. I had a particularly stressful day, and so I come flying out of the bedroom, and I'm like, Maddie, you will not do that. Like, Papa and I are a team. We will always say the same thing. You will not go to one and then try the other one. Da 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 da. And of course, she's just kind of looking at me like, you're a fool. Like, what are you saying to me,
You're
Daddy?
a fool.
I want a reaction. I want her to say like, yes, sir. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I won't do that again. And so
Sure.
I'm like, Maddie, do you understand? We're a team. We will always give you the same answer. And just then, her little brother comes like waddling up because he's like, what's all the commotion? And I'm like, we're a team. And she goes, yeah, I understand. And then she holds her brother's hand. She goes, I understand that makes us the other team. And the
That's
two of them like spin around and walk back to her room.
Oh,
And I was like,
snap.
whoa. It's in those moments you realize, like, we are raising a very smart child. And like you said, it's going to serve her so well. But in that moment,
awesome.
I had to just give it to her. I was like, you win that round,
Yep. That point
Yeah,
for Maddie.
yeah. So anyway, to your question, what keeps you going? It's the hope that you have these stories that you will then be able to laugh about and, think
Yes.
back. And, I'm an only child of an only child. And so to have a child of my own, and then that sort of, led into us having a second child, this is why you do it.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. What? And I know we've kind of talked about it, but Was there anything that you felt was just completely unexpected as you were going through the
Hmm.
journey? I think, some people they're like,
Sure.
you kind of sort of prepare yourself for like, it might not work or
Hmm.
there's going to kind of be those, I guess, quote, typical bumps that might happen. But was there ever anything where you were like, "Yep, that was from left field. I wasn't expecting that."
Right. I'll give one. It's sort of along the lines of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
You do prepare yourself for a miscarriage, or or not the transfer not taking.
Yeah.
Um, but we had a situation where when we decided to have our second child, our son, we were matched with an amazing woman who had
Mm.
three of her own children and a successful surrogacy with another family. And we had several miscarriages, and we
Mm.
just couldn't figure out like what was going on. And and in the end, we ended up switching surrogates after, like, again, this
Right.
long journey. And
Yeah.
it was like breaking up with a family member. It was so hard on
Yeah.
her. It was so hard on us. You felt just, your heart in your stomach. The good thing is she has since gone on and had a successful surrogacy with another family, and we ended up
Yeah.
matching with another woman who is still in our life, and
Yes.
um, and and had Henderson. So everything works out fine. But that was, we just didn't think about what would happen if we needed to end one
Right.
partnership and start another. And that's where, again, Surrogate
Yeah.
Solutions came in.
Yeah.
They were able to really, help us through this and tell us this is going to hurt on both sides. This is going to be,
Yeah.
but we agree that you know, this is probably what we need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, Gail was amazing when we were talking through, and this took us weeks to
Oh
come
yeah.
to this decision. Um,
Sure.
and she was amazing. She was like, guys, like, I know what this is doing to y'all. I see it. I will make the phone call for you if you
Yeah.
need. And we're like, as much as I'd love to take that easy route out,
Mm.
like we can't. We have to. But it was just amazing to know that she would have. And the amazing part is that our surrogate at the time probably wouldn't have been thrilled, but she would have taken it well because she was just as close to Gail as we were.
Yeah.
And that's one of the other key points on having somebody there who's just experienced and knows and has gone through everything and can help you with those decisions,
Yep.
because they're definitely
Right.
a struggle. Um,
Right. Right.
Well, and I think, like you said, knowing that you have that person that sees it from all sides and
Hmm.
is rooting for everyone and
Yep.
knows this isn't this is tearing you guys apart. This is breaking up with basically a family member in a way and all of those things. And then having I think there's comfort on both sides of knowing, there's someone there that's going to support her when maybe we don't have the strength to do that right now. We know that, there's going to be someone that knows what she's going through and knows what we've gone through and again, having that community during something that's so unique and so hard.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
exactly.
Oh, I could tell another thing that we didn't. It's not that we didn't see coming, but again, it's this sort of very when you're two guys trying to have a child, the gift of being a woman is like something that you sort of take for granted. Meaning, um, we had no way to produce milk for our babies, right? Like so.
Sure, sure. Yep, we got to think about feeding.
We had, a woman that donated eggs, two women that carried our babies, and then we had one of our surrogates. When she let down her milk, it actually caused her like a depressive episode, and so
Mm,
decided,
mhm.
for the sake of her family, and we fully supported her. She said, "Listen, I can't pump for you for the next 3 months because this is going to affect my family."
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
we're kind of pivoting as to, okay. And actually, someone from Surrogate Solutions was,
Yup.
the story. And so, at the same time, there was a moment in which her intended parents did not want to use, to decided not to pay or not to, get the milk.
Right, I think they were done, or, they
Yes,
chose to go a different route, or,
exactly.
whatever. Yeah, everyone
I
makes
don't
their
again,
decision.
they're not gonna share these personal details, but I knew that something had happened, and so suddenly we had someone that we knew, who happened to be part of Circuit Solutions and caring for another family, who's like, "I've got some milk." We're
And
like,
and ironically, what made it even better is did she have a C-section, or I can't remember the delivery, but she literally
"Oh,
delivered and was being discharged the day that Maddie was born. So
yes,
Oh,
like we walked down the hall
yep,
and sat in Katie's room and chatted about, okay, so what are, how are we logistically
sure,
um
let's talk about shipping, let's talk about dropping it off,
yep,
all of the fun that
yep,
is
yep,
part of
yep,
that,
yep,
yeah.
And she was even like, she was like, you know, keep me posted. I'm gonna go home and start pumping, and my husband and I will meet y'all at a gas station on the way out of town to
it's
give
true.
you whatever we've managed to pump so far
Oh my
Yep.
before you
gosh.
leave, which was, yet again an amazing experience.
Yeah, well, what are the odds,
Yeah.
right? So
What are the
these are the things,
odds? Yeah.
right? You just sort of take it. You don't take it for granted. But you just don't think it all the way through. And when we got back to New Orleans for our second child, for our son, I remember that there was a woman in town here that I knew through Tulane. Remember her,
I, I
her
think
sister-in-law.
I think that was Maddie. I think that was
Was it
toward
still
the.
Maddie?
I think that was at
Okay.
the end when I think we were wanting some more milk past the point, and so
You're
he
right.
had a colleague at work that was like, "I've got a freezer full,"
Oh my
um,
gosh.
and
Yeah.
so we're able to do that. And then
Great.
with Henderson, um, our surrogate took, which is natural, took some time before her milk started coming in,
Yeah.
which kind of she was wigging out for us, and literally like I reach out and I forgot how I did it. I think I went on a Facebook or something
Mhm.
that had something to do with like some milk stuff, and
Sure, like donating milk and,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
end up finding a woman who lives in New Orleans who had extra milk, and we're
Yeah.
like, like this is a stranger. And then I start looking at her friends, and one of our past tenants, who's a pediatric kidney
Doctor.
specialist, is one of her friends. So I reach out and I'm like, hey, do you know this person? She goes, yeah, she's awesome. She graduated med school with me. And yeah,
Oh
you
my
absolutely can trust
gosh.
her
Yep.
100%.
Yeah.
So
Talk about it takes a village.
it
It takes a
does.
village. Yeah, stars
100%.
align for sure.
Yes, it
Oh
does.
my gosh. So, looking back on just all of that and then being in the place that you are now, what would, and I know you've kind of given some advice on along the way, but
Yeah.
what would maybe be one of like those biggest pieces of advice, or what would you want to say to day one Myke and Harold looking back, or just that little nugget of maybe some intended parents that are about to go through this process, in the middle of this process, maybe even a gestational carrier as you're
Sure.
going through this?
Yeah, for me, it was all about the communication. I think that
Mhm.
again, the agency helped us facilitate that communication, but we were matched with three amazing women
Absolutely.
at
Yeah.
different times, and so up front you have to have some conversations that are awkward, right? So indeed, if
Sure.
the child were, and in our current environment where in our post Roe world, these conversations are even more important in
Yeah.
terms of, should there be a birth defect that's detected at some point during the pregnancy, what is the path forward, right? Like you have to.
Sure. Everybody needs to be in alignment no matter where
Exactly.
they stand on things, but you have to
Correct.
have those tough
Yes,
conversations.
yes, yeah. This is
Yeah.
not to put on one side or another. It's to simply say you need don't be in the moment when you have the conversations, right?
Absolutely.
Same thing as the intended parents, right? Just between the couple, or if you're a single
Hmm.
person, right? Whoever your support system is, it's super important that you sort of have these things lined up in the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's just the communication, right? Little
Hmm.
things such as, to your surrogate, are you comfortable if we are in the delivery room, right?
Hmm.
And so our both of ours, the general rule was behind my shoulders, I'm comfortable. Like stand in the stand in the
Sure.
back.
You can hang out over
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Yep,
exactly. But
exactly.
do not walk in the um, and then again the conversation about milk production, and then a big one for us was to talk up front is, do you want to play a role in our child's life? And that doesn't
Yeah.
mean raising the child, of course, but it
Oh, no.
means we want to have Auntie A and Auntie B, right? That they know that they have someone out there that did this amazing thing for them. And
Yeah.
still, we just went for Thanksgiving. We called it the Great Surrogacy Tour of 2023. We
Oh
went,
my gosh.
both of our surrogates, one's in Dallas, North Dallas, the other one's in San Antonio. And Harold's sister's in Houston. So we went and we went to Dallas, and went all the way down to San Antonio, and then we came back up to Houston for Thanksgiving. And, that was so great for our kids to see these wonderful women, and
Yeah.
and to have an ongoing dialogue.
Yeah.
And it helped us too to be able to, at a very early age, to normalize this for our children, right?
Oh gosh,
Clearly,
yeah.
their friends, in when they're even like 3 and 4 years old, would say things like, "Hey, why do you have two guys? Like, do you have two daddies?" And for us to at least have them understand the word surrogacy and
Mm-hmm.
understand, sort of like the magic that takes place, and the doctor that helped. My daughter right now gets in, not fights, but she will say, like if this didn't work for us,
Strong conversations.
strong conversations. Like we are also pro adoption, right? If this didn't work for us, adoption would have been another avenue that we would have taken.
Sure.
Um, but when you're a young child, especially when you come, not from the surrogacy journey, you've got a mom and a dad, and so if there's anything other than that, the assumption is that you must be adopted. And so Maddie will say,
Mm.
"I'm not adopted. I came from surrogacy." And of course, the little kid who she's talking to is not going to understand the difference. And so, it's not like Maddie's like, I'm anti-adoption. It's just I was not adopted. Like
Right.
I'm
That's
like,
not her story. Yeah.
it's not my story. Don't put that. And so, it's just great that, and this has been going on since she was like 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So that's another piece of advice is, nothing is secret in this world, and so
Yeah.
anymore, right? It's really important that you don't put that sort of secrecy on it, because then it suddenly becomes, well, it's a story you have to tell your child, or you have
Mm.
reveal. I mean, even if there was no biological tie to either one of us, right? Like that would be something up front that we would just talk about with our kids. So that's a piece of advice. It's just communication is key.
And it's
Yeah.
also kind of surprising to me the number of people who don't understand what a surrogate is, and that
Mm.
Yeah,
the term surrogate is a new term and not the same term as it was in biblical times.
Sure. Yes.
Like it, kind of joking. Mike's mom's old, but she'll in the beginning it took forever for her to realize. She was like, well, what kind of woman just gives away her child? And we were like, well, mom,
Nope.
not
that's
right.
not what you are.
That's not what's happening here.
It took a long time for her to grasp that concept.
Yeah,
And we've run across other people just in society who kind of thought the same thing. So you've got to be
Yeah.
prepared for a lot of unique
Educating.
questions
yeah,
on
educating.
some cases.
Yeah,
I will add to that one that I think is critical, to me, for um, something to know ahead of time and kind of think through is, I remember, I think the first time we went to Dr. Goldstein's office when we were filling out our paperwork at the fertility clinic, and you fill out the form that says, what do you want to do with your biological material? So
Sure.
either egg, sperm, embryo, right? And so also remember, this is key for probably people, is when we did egg donation, it was not what people have the opportunity for now. it was only anonymous egg donation. We had no opportunity to meet our egg donor, uh,
Right.
or know her name or any of it. We went off of paperwork basically.
Right.
Um, but they were like, okay, so when we're done, you can dispose of your genetic material, you can donate it to science. I want to say that was the only two options, or you can keep it, or you can keep
Right. And
paying
you just store it. Yeah.
Keep it
for,
on ice.
for cryo storage. And so, I remember like kind of being taken a little bit aback. I know Gail had told us about it, but like it was one of those things she said, but it
When you're
didn't.
in the midst of
Yeah.
so much information, you kind of forget or kind of pick and choose and what you're going to focus on.
Went through one ear and out the other until
Absolutely.
you're handed a piece of paper. And so we're kind of looking at each other and we're like, well, I don't want to, like, what's it mean donate to science? And they were like, well, we'll let someone test implanting an embryo in a woman that we know can't get pregnant for a doctor to learn. We're like, okay, like I would be more comfortable doing that than disposal. But then afterwards, we didn't get into the story of Henderson, and I don't know if this is maybe a good time to kind of talk on some of that because it's relevant. Um, I had fertility issues from
Yeah.
long-term testosterone injections when we switched from my. So clearly I wasn't in the picture when we were using my sister.
Genetically speaking.
Yes, I
Yeah.
was not part of that.
Yeah, that's frowned upon.
But all of a sudden, when we switched to an egg donor, then I'm like, well,
What about me?
what about me? And he's like, well, I'm sorry, but this has been mine. And I'm like,
Yeah.
the
Not
roles are
exactly
different.
how it went.
It's like the roles are different. So, we were trying to maneuver that mid cycle, like how do we change
Yeah.
course, which was
Sure.
again an interesting path, right? So we end up saying, okay, we're gonna do our sperm donations, and then we'll wait till we're closer to the transfer, and we'll figure out what we're gonna do. And we go to Dr. Goldstein, we do it, we literally leave. We are at the gas station outside of the airport filling up the car to return it, and we get a phone call saying, we need you to come back to the office. We've had a problem. And I'm like,
Mm.
what do you mean? And they were like, well, you need to come back and do another sperm donation. And I was like, why? And they were like, well, you had 0 sperm count. So something must be wrong. Do
Wow.
another one. And I know a lot about science. And this was just a moment I was just like, I just felt so stupid because I knew it. But until they said it, I go, like the minute she said it, I go, no, I'm not going back. And she goes, you need to. I go, I'm wasting your time. Like, I've been on testosterone therapy for 10 years. I'm
Oh.
fertile. Like, I should have known this. Um, so I leave. They're like, you have time, go start fertility treatments, get off your testosterone, go through all this. And so we're still trying to decide, who's going to fertilize Maddie's eggs, or the eggs for Maddie. And we didn't have to make the decision because my fertility doctor wasn't aggressive enough because he misunderstood the timeline. And so when it came time for the transfer, I still wasn't there. So,
Oh gosh. And again, talk about just more of those bumps and things as you're just navigating all of this.
right, I'm sitting there, feeling what the surrogate is feeling because I'm giving myself shots in the stomach every morning and every night,
Oh gosh.
and
Yeah.
doing all this stuff. And so ends up working out great. We fertilize the batch of eggs that we have
With me.
with
Right,
Myke.
yeah.
We have a successful transfer,
Yeah.
and then we're talking, and I was like, "You're an only child of an only child.
Yep.
You know the struggles of it. We care for his mom now." I was like, "I'd be happy with one kid because I come from 4, but."
Speaking as somebody who had the really large
I was
family.
like, but you're gonna want more than one kid. Like, you're gonna feel better with this. So I was like, let's plan on another process. And Myke was like, well, we'll deal with that later down the road. And I said, my dad taught me one thing I remember in my life. When someone
Mm.
offers you something you want, you take it now because it may not be there tomorrow. So
Mm.
we immediately reached out, and Goldstein was able to get the egg donor to do a sibling um, egg
Harvest.
retrieval.
Retrieval. Uh-huh.
And I told Mike, I was like, I'm just going to fertilize it. I'm going to get back on my testosterone. We're going to leave it on cryo. If we choose never to use it, it's there. But if we don't, we have it. And
Yeah.
so a year after Maddie was born, we kind of then start the process of trying to have Henry. And like he mentioned, we went through 2 miscarriages,
Yeah.
and that was very trying and hard. And then by then, the I'm going to call it the market because I don't know the term for it, but the market changed. And when we started with Maddie, it was a very IP friendly environment to where the IPs were making all the
Lots of different
decisions.
decisions and yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then it shifted to a surrogate market to where there were so much fewer surrogates that they were more picking their IPs than their IPs picking them. And so it was getting harder to find someone. That were just at that particular period, there were less surrogates on the market. And we had a few that were presented, and none of them were kind of just matching. Um, or again, we were having some making finances work. And so when we when we had to switch surrogates, we were going through the same thing again. And um, Gail called me one day, and I was walking through Lowe's, and she was like, I've got a surrogate who I never thought would do a journey again. She has always wanted to do this, but really just didn't have the experience she was hoping for.
Yeah.
And, all of a sudden she butt dialed me yesterday, and we started talking, and she goes, Gail, I want to do this again. And she was like, are you are you sure? And she goes,
Sure,
absolutely.
yeah.
She goes, I've wanted to do this since I was 18. She said, this my first journey did not go as I was hoping, but I'm going to have the experience that I've dreamed about. And she goes, I'm
Mm.
willing to try again. And Gail goes, okay. And so they're kind of talking, and she goes, I've got 2 guys that might might be interested. And she was like, guys, that's perfect. She goes, I love it. She goes,
Awesome.
that's perfect. And so Gail called me, and we were kind of talking, and I was kind of leery on a couple of things. And then Gail said, I was like, when's she available?
Mm.
Because she had not long before had her surrogacy journey. And she goes,
Sure.
November 16th, I think. And I remember like stopping in Lowe's and sitting down, like wherever I was, I
Mm.
just sat. And I was like, are you certain? And she goes, I'm pretty sure. And I said, I've got to get on the phone with Mike. I said, but I need you to call her back, and I want absolute confirmation that November 16th is the date that her doctor has said she's first available for a transfer. And so she was like, Gail just knew I was a little peculiar in some things. So she didn't even ask. She just said, sounds
Sure,
good.
no problem.
I'll call you back. And so I called Mike and talked to him, and then Gail calls me back, and she was like, "Yep, nope, I was right, November 16th." And
Yeah.
I was like, I started crying, and I was like, "Done." I said that was the successful transfer date for Maddie
Oh,
after all of our transfers, and then now after 2 miscarriages. I was like, we were questioning it, but this is a
Yeah.
sign we're gonna move forward.
again, more signs,
More
more
science.
signs.
Yeah.
And we transferred on November 16th, and our children's birthdays are 6 days apart.
Oh
Yep.
my gosh.
So yeah, so it was one of those things that just
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
stars align, and when things are kind of
You
going
just know
well.
when things are going.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I did get sidetracked, which I do all the time. But my main caution was um, back to the determining what you're going to do with your genetic material.
Yeah.
have that conversation between the parents, or if it's a single person, take
Think
it
about it.
serious, put significant time and effort into that decision. And we're going to speak from experience because
Yep.
we have a almost 9 and 6 year old, and we are paying to store one embryo of Mike's and
Two or
two
three.
of
Yeah.
three of mine, because we know we're not having a third child. There's
Uh-huh.
no way we're going
No.
to be outnumbered.
Yeah, no, it
Um,
sounds like that's a pretty strong team
Yes. Correct.
in the
Yes.
same house with.
People always ask us if we're doing this again, and our response is we can't have accidents, and so there will not be a third in our household. Um, but we still are struggling with what do we do, because clearly don't want to get rid of material. Like, I'm not going to do that, but I'm still really torn because
It's such a personal decision, and it
yeah,
just and it's
if,
hard. It's hard to
if
navigate that.
Yeah.
if multiple amazing women wouldn't have given us part of themselves, we wouldn't have children.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
for me, it's like there's someone out there that could use an embryo, I'm sure, but at the same time, then it makes it complicated, right? I have a genetic child out there that I now know about. I now need to tell my child that there's a potentially known sibling, and so we've just not been able to make that decision. And
Yeah.
so I think we could have, if we would have had that conversation at the beginning, I think
Hmm.
we would have been better prepared. Yeah.
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 So just
Well, and yeah, and again, like that's such a everyone's going to have their own thoughts behind it and just all of the things, but you're right, it's so hard to think about that. And I mean, and again, the expense of it, like, if you're thinking about
Sure.
it from a logistical standpoint,
Yep.
like we
Yep.
keep waiting on this decision, and the kiddos are just keep getting older.
Yes.
And all
Yes.
the everything changes, right? Like I tell you, when we
Yeah.
first started, it was dispose or donate to science. They didn't do embryo adoption when we did our first,
Right.
Right.
so that wasn't even an option. And now with the crazy overturning of Roe and the crazy options of laws, you don't know if you're gonna be forced into keeping embryos. So
Sure, just the
it's
world
even more
keeps.
complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough to navigate with a constantly changing,
Yep.
just situation. Yeah, for sure. No, that's amazing. That's amazing advice, and definitely, I mean, and I appreciate you being so open and vulnerable and sharing that even after you've kind of you've had your quote happy ending as far as your two beautiful amazing children, it's still part of that journey
Yeah.
that is kind of
Yes.
there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. So my final question, and it's a fun one.
Okay.
And again, you guys, I'm so grateful that you guys shared and were so vulnerable, and I mean such a beautiful story, and have been in this seat, getting to look back and kind of having that hindsight and sharing those moments. But my final question to you, for anyone who knows me, they know that I have a very codependent relationship with coffee. And so I always love to ask what filled your cup, whether it's literally or figuratively. What was the thing that has filled your cup?
Oh my gosh. Um, the the one thing about the cup, I think you may know what I'm about to say, Whitney. I'm a pretty honest person. My cup is going to runneth over, and there's days that you're going to turn it upside down. Like, please, just give me a little drop in there today, kids. I just can't make it. But when it's these little connective moments for me, right? Like I teach at a
Yeah.
university, And when my son comes home and suddenly out of the blue is able to read words, right?
Ah,
And I'm like, wait, are you just, because my daughter used to just memorize things we would say to her
oh,
and then
sure.
she regurgitated back, right? And I was like, are you really reading? Or are you just, but with him,
Remembering.
I
Yeah.
flipped a few pages. I mean, th- these are the moments that really does fill up your cup where you realize this is someone who you are helping to support. I've been reading to him and of course to Maddie as well, at bedtime, and they're taking these things in, and then eventually their teachers in
Mm.
school are putting the connective tissue that you've put in place. They've connected it in a way in which you're like, wow, these kids are actually going to make it. Like we're not the worst parents in the world. Like but see, yeah,
Dorito dust and all, they're gonna make
yeah,
it.
Justin Wall, that's an empty cup kind of day when that happens. But yeah, for me, it's those moments, those little developmental milestones where you're like, okay, and our son is really huggy, and so when he
Oh,
comes up and gives you the hug, and then our daughter, she's almost 9, and so she's fighting with this independence, and she's
mm,
always been very strong, but
yeah.
last night she fell. We got hardwood floors, and she was wearing socks, and down she went, and she
Yeah,
bumped her
sure.
elbow. And when she bumps her elbow, and she runs to you, right? You can tell that it's an instinct in that moment. It's not her making a choice
Yeah.
to run to you. It's her just reacting and coming to you, and you're caring for her. Clearly, I don't want her to hurt herself, but when she,
Sure, but your comfort, your
yeah,
home.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's for me.
Yeah. I think mine are similar. And I think no matter what, when we have struggles and parenting, parenting is very, very hard some days.
Yes,
Yes, it is.
Especially when you're a type A personality who thinks things should always be in place and there is logic and control, and you're little humans with underdeveloped brains
There it is.
who
Yep.
knew that you have no control
yeah,
over anything. That they still love you even when you make mistakes. And
Yeah.
there are wonderful support systems out there for, we've reached out and done, family therapy things to help us get through points where we were struggling, and, to have our therapist look at us and say, I know you think you're messing up. I know you think you're not a good parent, and
Mm-hmm.
your biggest problem is your expectations of yourself,
yeah,
because you're doing a fine job and your kids are great.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, get support where you can, because it's definitely out there.
Well, again, just more of that village, right? You had that village to get there, and we have that village moving forward.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh
absolutely.
my goodness. Well, again, thank you guys so much. And I'm so grateful that even in the stage that you guys are in, that we still get to, just meet back up and see how your world is, and your beautiful, sweet family. And just so grateful for your wisdom and support, to those who are in where you guys were 10 plus years ago.
Yeah. Yep. 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 It was great, Whitney. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Me, You, and Who. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed our discussion today. As we wrap, we would like to remind you of some of the ways that you can stay connected with us and be part of the Me, You, and Who podcast community. Firstly, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode and can stay up to date with our latest content. But that's not all. We also have an exciting YouTube channel where we share some bonus content, behind the scenes glimpses, and video versions of our episodes. Head over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button there as well. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the new episodes go live. And for more exclusive updates, engaging discussions, and a chance to connect with fellow listeners. Be sure to follow us on our social media accounts. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Create a Happy Family. If you're interested in finding out more about creating a happy family, please visit us at www.createahappyfamily.com. Thank you again for being part of the Me, You, and Who community. Your support means the world to us. I can't wait for you to join us next time as we continue to share stories and journeys of creating happy families.